A notebook and a dream too loud for 1940s America. In the dark streets of Harlem, Elijah Turner watched his father's trumpet speak the truth that people refused to hear. But one night, that truth was punished. The music stopped. The laughter vanished. And a young boy discovered that in a world built to silence him, his only weapon would be his words. Because when they tried to break his father's song, they accidentally gave birth to a voice that would never die. In the heart of 1940s Harlem, where the streets hummed with jazz and dreams floated like smoke above rooftops, lived a boy named Elijah Turner. He was small, curious, and full of wonder. The kind of child who believed that music could fix anything. His father, Louis Turner, was a jazz musician who played the trumpet like it carried pieces of his soul. Each night, the sound of his horn drifted through the narrow streets, mixing with the laughter of neighbors and the smell of fried food from corner diners. People said his music could make you forget your troubles, if only for a moment. Elijah's mother, Clara, worked for a white family across the street, a street that divided not just homes but entire lives. Every morning, Elijah watched her leave in her plain dress and apron, crossing into a world that wasn't built for them. She would return late, tired but smiling, saying softly, "We can't all live where we clean, baby, but maybe one day you can." Elijah's world was filled with rhythm, the rhythm of footsteps, of hope, of struggle. Yet behind that rhythm was something unspoken, a wall invisible but unbreakable, a wall that told him where he could walk, where he could dream, and when he should stay silent. And though Elijah didn't know it yet, that silence, that invisible boundary, was about to be tested in a way that would change his life and the voice of Harlem forever. As the years passed, Harlem's rhythm grew louder, and so did Elijah's dreams. He was no longer just a boy chasing sounds. He was a young man chasing meaning. Every day, he watched his father polish his dented trumpet, the one that had sung in smoky clubs filled with laughter and sweat. Places where black musicians played for white applause but entered through the back door. Louis Turner had learned long ago that talent could make people smile, but not make them see you as equal. Sometimes Elijah would follow him to the edge of downtown, where the music changed its tone, where black notes were welcome, but black faces were not. He saw how the bouncers nodded to the beat but never to the man. And each time his father bowed his head, pretending not to notice, a quiet fire began to burn inside Elijah's chest. At home, his mother's hands were cracked from scrubbing floors. She'd hum softly while folding white linen that was never theirs. She'd tell Elijah, "Don't let anger steal your grace." But grace was hard to hold when the world kept pushing you down. One evening, Elijah began to write. Not songs like his father, but words. Poems that bled like jazz, verses that hummed with truth. He wrote about streets divided by color, about dreams too big for one side of the city. He hid the pages under his bed, afraid his words were too dangerous to live out loud. But one night, everything changed. If this story touched you, don't just watch. Be part of the change. Hit subscribe and join our community of voices that matter. Louis was playing outside a Harlem bar, the kind of crowd that didn't care about color, only rhythm. The trumpet soared, sharp and alive, echoing off the walls. Then the police arrived. They said he was playing too loud. They said it was disturbing the peace. But everyone knew what that really meant. Elijah watched from across the street as his father's music turned into silence, replaced by the sound of boots, shouts, and breaking brass. The trumpet hit the ground. His father did too. For the first time, Elijah felt the world crack open, and something inside him broke with it. That night, the pages under his bed were no longer enough. He sat by the window, pen shaking in his hand, and began to write again. But this time, the words weren't dreams. They were defiance. They were fire. And though he didn't know it yet, those words would become the voice that Harlem and America could no longer ignore. The night was heavy, the air thick with grief and memory. A week had passed since the police beat his father's music out of the world. The trumpet lay silent on the table, its brass bent like a wound that would never heal. Elijah hadn't spoken much since that night. But inside him something was building, a storm, quiet but certain. He could still hear the echo of the trumpet in his mind, a note unfinished, and he knew. It was his turn to finish it. He stepped outside, clutching a small notebook filled with words that burned to be heard. On the same corner where his father once played, Elijah began to read. At first, his voice trembled. They say music is noise when it comes from our streets. They say dreams are dangerous when they come from our skin. People stopped. A woman looked up from her doorstep. A man paused his walk. Then another. And another. The crowd grew, drawn not by rhythm this time, but by truth. As Elijah's voice strengthened, so did their silence. He read of his father's broken trumpet, of his mother's weary hands, of a world that taught them to bow their heads, and of a son who refused to. Then came the sirens. The same flashing lights, the same blue uniforms that had silenced his father. They told him to stop, to go home, to stay quiet. But Elijah didn't stop. His voice cut through the noise, trembling but unbroken. "You can beat the music, but you can't silence the song." The crowd erupted, a chorus of defiance and grief. For the first time, Harlem didn't hide. They stood. They listened. They believed. And in that moment, beneath the same streetlight where a trumpet once sang, Elijah Turner became more than his father's son. He became the voice of a people who had waited too long to be heard. Weeks after that night, the streets of Harlem still whispered Elijah's name. The boy who dared to speak where his father once played had started something no one could stop. Local papers called it a disturbance. But to those who were there, it was a beginning, a spark that lit the first fires of courage in a city tired of silence. Elijah kept reading, week after week, turning street corners into classrooms of truth. His words spread beyond Harlem, carried by people who had once been too afraid to speak. And somewhere in that awakening, others began to remember their own voices too. By the time Elijah was 20, schools invited him to share his poems. A record label asked to turn his father's music and his words into an album. Songs they tried to silence. It became a quiet anthem for the unheard, but Elijah never called himself a hero. He would visit his father's grave and leave a single trumpet valve, a reminder that every sound, no matter how small, can change the world if someone dares to listen. His story became more than history. It became a mirror, reflecting a truth that still burns today. That in every generation there are those told to stay quiet, know their place, or wait for their time. But change never waits. It begins when someone, somewhere, refuses to be silent. So the question remains, if a boy with nothing but a notebook could make America listen in 1942, what's stopping us now?